Maybe a few years from now, we're talking about, is Islam Makhachev better than Khabib? Is he the best lightweight of all time? What's up, Barnhill family, and welcome back to your home for all things combat sports.
Yo.
So, Nick, much to the dismay of a lot of UFC lightweights on the roster, it looks like Islam Makhachev is going to have his first title defense in Perth, Australia, against the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world right now, Alexander Volkanovski. They brought him in the cage after Islam won his belt. It was a cool moment. And hey, listen, I am down for this fight.
Very cool moment. And it's so important to make your next fight when you're in the cage with the belt, right there with the microphone, talking to whoever's giving the post-fight speech. I think that's actually a perfect fight for his first title defense. And Volkanovski's been wanting that. He's been chomping at the bit. He made weight as the alternate. So that seems like a perfect fit for me. While there are a lot of deserving lightweights, I think there is a little bit of dust that needs to settle at lightweight before we jump right into that. And when you have somebody who's daring to be great and go for champ status, you got to give them that opportunity, especially when they've done as much for the sport and their division as Volkanovski.
For sure. And if there's a guy on a 20-fight win streak who's the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world, at least on paper, I think that person deserves the benefit of the doubt, even if they don't compete at 155 pounds. And you're right, the dust does need to settle a little bit at 55. What you have at 155 is a lot of people at the top who have already fought for the belt and lost. Justin Gaethje, Dustin Poirier, Michael Chandler, the exception to the rule being Benny Dariush. I think he's kind of getting the short end of the stick here. That performance against Mateusz Gamrot was really a great win, and I think that's 8 in a row for Benny now. So he certainly stakes his claim, but I don't think his claim should eclipse Volkanovski's claim. I think Volkanovski has done enough to deserve this title shot. And honestly, this is way early, and we're looking to this fight to happen in February of next year or sometime like that. But I am going to lean towards Islam winning this one after I saw what I saw against Charles. I mean, I think Islam might be the most complete MMA fighter on the planet right now. I was blown away by his striking. He was able to put Charles down, which started the finishing sequence. His clinch and cage work was as good as ever. And while I think Volk said, look, I'm strong, I'm hard to keep on the ground, and I hit hard, all of that is true, and Volk will put up a good fight. But ultimately, I think this is going to be one of those ones that goes in the favor of Makhachev.
Yeah, early predictions would have to go towards Islam, and I think the betting odds would probably favor Islam to win that fight. But Volkanovski, as we have found out, is very difficult to submit, and I think the speed would play a major factor in this. Volkanovski is one of the fastest fighters at 45, and I think if he brought that speed up to 55, he would be very difficult for some of those guys to hit. And Islam Makhachev does really good in the striking, but he does it really good with the fundamentals. He's not getting flashy. Occasionally you'll see a head kick or something like that, but it's straight ones and twos down the pipe, every now and again a hook if your guard's a little bit too far forward. But what we've come to find out with these really elite wrestlers and grapplers and submission artists is they can just let themselves be free and be loose when it comes to striking, because they don't really have to worry about somebody taking them down, because nobody wants to spend any time on the ground with them. And I think that's exactly what would happen if Islam fought Volkanovski. We'd see Volkanovski in there tagging him a little bit and getting out really fast, but he is going to have to cover a lot of range because he is a shorter fighter. He doesn't have a very long reach, and so he would have to risk some of those positions to get inside to land those big shots on Islam. And it appears to me that Islam Makhachev has quite a chin on him. He's very durable, and once he gets his hands on you, it's curtains.
Yeah, for sure. And if you asked Alexander Volkanovski if he had his way, how much of this fight would be spent on the ground, he would say exactly 0 minutes and 0 seconds of this fight would he prefer to be on the ground. So if he has his druthers, this will be a striking match from the start until the fight is over, whether that be 25 minutes or sooner. Islam is going to be the one who has to initiate those ground exchanges. That kind of goes without saying. But it's going to be interesting to see, because Volkanovski, even though he is a weight class smaller than Islam, he was a gentleman who weighed over 200 pounds during his rugby days. He's freakishly strong, and you saw against T-City Ortega that his submission defense is very good. He was in submissions that would have any other fighter dead to rights. I mean, a mounted guillotine from somebody like T-City is nothing to play around with. A triangle from somebody with the name T-City, which is short for Triangle City, if you have that as your fight name, you're probably pretty good at throwing up triangles on people. So to be able to get out of that just shows his toughness, his grit, and his submission defense. So I think it's an intriguing fight, but I am leaning towards Makhachev.
Yeah, my early prediction would have to go with Islam as well. But one thing I love about these two fighters is they stick to their game plans. And their game plans are completely different from one another. You know, Volkanovski comes from that great team where you've got tons of champions and elite level MMA fighters in the UFC. And Khabib's team is obviously one of the greatest as far as sticking to a game plan. And they have the same game plan no matter who they are. They go in there and they do the same thing over and over to all their opponents. And pretty much don't lose a round doing it every time they go out there. So I would love to see whose game plan would have to crack and whose game plan would bend, because both of those guys come in and they do exactly what their coaches told them to. They do exactly what they practiced in the entire training camp. And Volkanovski usually doesn't budge when it comes to how he's going to win fights and win rounds. And also the same can be said for Islam. So I don't really know what would happen in this fight. I'm leaning towards Islam probably getting his hand raised, but Volkanovski's not somebody you can just count out.
For sure. And one final thing, Khabib said that he wants Islam to be a very active champion, so they're ready to turn around and head to Australia first thing next year. I love that the newly crowned champion is going to go into enemy territory in Australia and defend his belt for the first time. And then he said he's ready to start churning out the 155 contenders and going to be an active champion as the years go. So we may see Khabib start to coach the guy who actually eclipses him as being the best lightweight of all time. I mean, if Islam Makhachev is as active as they say he's going to be and he's as dominant as he's proven to already be, it's kind of one of those things where destiny will fulfill itself. Maybe a few years from now, we're talking about, is Islam Makhachev better than Khabib? Is he the best lightweight of all time? Which is, I'm sure, honestly, like a father to a son, even though they have more of a brotherly friendship relationship, Khabib would be honored and happy to pass that torch to Islam should that day come.
I completely agree. Khabib wants to see his guys succeed, and it seemed to me like nobody was more on edge and more excited for Islam's fight than Khabib. I mean, Khabib was the first person in the cage once Charles Olivera started tapping. He was so happy for this moment. John Anik said it best during the commentary that this is much more than an investment that Khabib has in Islam's career.
No doubt. Thanks for watching this video, guys. We're your hub for all things combat sports. If that's your jam, we appreciate a subscribe and a like on the video, and drop us a comment down below. We'll see you next time.
Peace.